This is Mrs. O'Neill for your Chapter 9 review questions and problems. And again, you might want to pause and kind of look at this picture. Represents 3 different compounds, the same number of electron domains, but different numbers of bonds versus unpaired shares of electrons, which means it gives us different shapes. And that's what Chapter 9 was all about. You're going to play the video, pause, see the question or the problem. Some of them have multiple parts. Answer them mentally or on paper. So you should have your calculator and your reference sheets out. Play the video to see the answers and or solutions. And some of these are above and beyond what you're going to see in class for the test, but they might appear somewhat similar on your AP exam. Here's number 1 labeled as geometries. And these are commas, by the way, guys. So it's SIF4. That's just a comma. Hopefully you came up with this as your answer. Okay, so again, notice the difference between 4 bonds here, 4 bonds and 1 electron, unpaired shares of electrons, and this one's 4 bonds but 2 unpaired shares of electrons. So again, it's really, really important to know how many valence electrons each of your elements have. It's very important to know how to count them up and start. And it's really important to know those exceptions to the rules. Remember, as you are a non-metal, on the bottom right corner of your periodic table, the bigger atom you are, so you have that exceptions to the rules and you can gain more electrons. Number 2, PF4Cl. Okay, let's see what you got versus what I got. So A is your structure. And I also want to point out that, again, notice how you have dash marks and like a triangle here. That's just to show depth, right? It's to show 3D. You do not have to do that. You should show lines for bonds and you should show dots for your electrons, but make sure to have all of these dots around chlorine and fluorine and such. B. C. Hopefully you paused that and read it over and it makes sense to you. D, same thing. And again, this is good to either read or try to understand just in case you need to have some kind of justification or explanation for your free response questions. Sigma and pi bonds. Now I will tell you that letter A, it says to draw the Lewis structure. And if you notice here, a couple of things. First of all, they're kind of written in the way that you're supposed to make the model. You also want to think about this. It's an acid. So you're going to have that carboxylic acid group that you learned in chapter 24. This is why we learned those. This is why you had to memorize them. So here is our structure kind of written in condensed form. Again, because it's an organic compound. So did you get this for A? Hopefully that makes sense, right? Hopefully that OH in parentheses, you kind of figured that it was going to be attached to that C. And then again, you have that carboxylic acid group because they told you it was an acid. So again, if you didn't get this at first, that's okay. I will tell you that on your AP exam, they usually, if they ask for a Lewis structure, they usually will give you like the skeleton. And what I mean is they would have given you the C, the C, the C, and possibly the O's. You would have just had to draw in the single and double and the electrons around it. They might have and they might not have given you the H's per se, but they usually do give you some kind of structure to start with. So now that you have the structure, make sure to either go back, and now you can definitely do the rest of these parts. So here's your B answer, and what I did was I labeled all of my sigma and pi bonds because then it's easier for me to quickly count them, or maybe slash mark them, right? I would have maybe like cut through this and I would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, counting up my sigma. So this way you don't get lost, especially when it's a large molecule like this. C. D and E. So I have your hybridization and your bond angles here. And again, these do not have to be exact. Your bond angles actually, they usually represent some kind of range. They'll accept like this to this, because again, it's kind of not known exactly what the bond angles would be. But again, they're only going to accept a certain value or a certain range of numbers. Off to number 4, hybridization. Now, letter A is something, that we did way back in the beginning in chapter, oh my goodness, 1, 2, or 3. Probably was chapter 3 when we dealt with empirical and molecular formulas. So if you don't remember, you want to maybe go back there and get through those notes on molecular formulas, because that's something that you might or might not have done in Chem 1 class, in your Chem 1, but again, dealing with moles. So I believe that was chapter 3. All right, so hopefully you paused. And again, if you didn't feel like doing A, because that was way back in the day, you should still been able then to do B, C, D, and E once I show you the answer to A. So here's our answer to A. So again, we want to remember that our percent really is grams, right? So percent to grams, grams to moles. Look at which moles gives you the least amount of moles and divide all three. And then we have our subscripts. And so those subscripts are here. The empirical formula mass, they gave you the molecular formula mass. You divide them out, you still get 1. So in this case, your molecular and your empirical are exactly the same formula. So again, hopefully that makes sense, or you did go back to chapter 3 and quickly reviewed how to do that. But now that you know the molecular formulas, now you should be able to answer the rest. So here is your answer to B. And C. And D. So hopefully that makes sense. And we want to remember they usually are very specific as to which element they are referring to or want the answer to. And E. And number 5, again, pause. And for letter C, those bond enthalpies, I have that chart. Remember chart 8.4. It's also in your textbooks if you need it. But I have the table on the next slide for you. Here's your answer. So there's the chart. Sorry, there's your chart again. Again, at least it's nice and clear for you. And answer to A. Again, something that you don't see very often. This is like a weird compound, but it does exist. So that's what I want to show you. I want to show you certain things that, again, the AP exam tries to trick you sometimes in showing you things or dealing with things that you're not used to seeing all throughout the course, but just kind of take it as a normal. This is a normal combination reaction. B. C. Again, a little bit of math, so depending on how you put it into your calculator, your value might be slightly different than mine. D. And again, on the AP exam, it's going to want to show all of those dots around it if they wanted the structure. E. Hopefully that makes sense to you after you've paused and read that over. And good luck on your test.